much. Thank you very much, dear brothers and sisters. Your Excellencies, Archbishop Quevedo, Bishop Ochimar, Bishop Beltram, worthy Philippine deputies, worthy Supreme Director, officers of KC-FAPI, brother knights and ladies, my dear friends. Thank you for inviting me to your national convention and for serving as such gracious hosts to me and my wife, Dorian. I remember well my visit to Manila in March 2005. During that trip, I got to see firsthand the dynamic leadership and strong spirit that drive forward the Knights of Columbus in the Philippines. When the devastating floods hit Manila last September, my heart and mind went back to my visit there, and I knew that the Knights of Columbus throughout the order would unite with their brothers in need, and they did. And I am very proud that we were able to send $100,000 through the Supreme Council to the Philippines Bishops' Conference for their humanitarian efforts. I also congratulate all of my Filipino brother knights here who took part in those local relief efforts. I know many of you from Luzon were directly affected by the storms, yet this did not stop you from stepping aside from your own hardship to help those in even greater need. That is the spirit of the Knights of Columbus. It is appropriate that when we meet now in Cebu City, in Visayas, for the 8th Philippine National Convention, that we do so under the theme volunteerism, neighbors helping neighbors. And who is my neighbor? Filipino Knights know the answer. My neighbor is anyone in need. In keeping with that theme, I wish to speak tonight about the close and unbreakable bond between the American and Filipino people. Although we are separated by half a world, we are neighbors. We are united by a history and by values that transcend distance and that have seen Filipinos and Americans united side by side in the common cause of freedom and democracy. Whenever I come to the Philippines, I am always struck by the importance of the twin pillars of any strong culture, any strong society, the pillars of faith and family. Because of these two supports and our dedication as Knights of Columbus to them, the Knights of Columbus has taken solid root in the Philippines. And it's little wonder that dedicated to these two principles, the Knights of Columbus has grown exponentially here for more than a century. Faith has been a significant catalyst to this growth. First, there is the common faith that those first Knights shared with the many men they recruited here in the Philippines. It came down to the fact that as Catholics, they were all part of a universal church, and the same is true today. That faith, manifested through the first principle of our order, charity, leads naturally to our second and third principles, unity and fraternity. Here it didn't matter if knights were American or Filipino, if their names were Idralin or Wilman. They were neighbors. Indeed, they were brothers. They were Catholic men called knights. This close association between the Filipino and American people goes back more than a century, just about as long as the association between your country and the Knights of Columbus. It is very significant that although the first council in the Philippines, Manila Council 1000, was started by American citizens who were here after the Spanish-American War, our order was handed off seamlessly to Filipinos in Manila. It was natural for the American Knights to invite Filipino men into their council. After all, this is a country that is mostly Catholic. So when those first members of Council 1000 looked around, they saw not strangers, but fellow Catholics and future brother knights. In fact, Filipinos began joining Council 1000 only 2 years after its establishment. This bond of brotherhood could not be broken by war, nor by natural disaster. Indeed, the worse things got, the stronger the bond grew between the knights themselves and between the knights and those most in need. When General MacArthur was forced to leave the Philippines to fight another day, he promised, "I shall return." And he kept his promise. But ladies and gentlemen, I am proud of the fact that in 105 years, the Knights of Columbus have never left. We have never left in the face of disaster, or in the face of invasion, or in the face of any other difficulty. More than 65 years ago, General MacArthur made good on his promise to return to his beloved Philippines and lead its liberation. We're all familiar with the photos of MacArthur landing at Red Beach at Leyte and wading onto the shore, his face set in determination to press forward, northward, toward the enemy forces. The Americans progressed at a slow but steady pace. But as MacArthur made his way up to Luzon and past the fortifications at Bataan and Corregidor, those fortifications he was forced to leave 3 years before, the emotional toll of return overcame the general. It was an emotional moment for MacArthur, and he found himself unable to complete his address when he spoke to the newly liberated people of Manila. Instead, he asked those assembled to recite with him the Lord's Prayer. MacArthur, never a church-going man, nonetheless knew the value of Christian faith to the Filipino people. In a city bearing the fresh wounds of war and harsh occupation, Americans and Filipinos stood shoulder to shoulder in prayer. As they had fought in war, and as Americans and Filipinos, knights had stood together for more than 40 years. The liberation of 1945 and the hardships suffered by the Filipino people beforehand is familiar history to all of us. But just as war brings out the worst in people, it also brings out the very best. It was a time for heroes, and therefore it was a time for the Knights of Columbus. It was indeed a time for the Knights of Columbus. In the crucible of World War II, the faith of the Philippines shone all the more brightly, and we, the Knights of Columbus, were a part of that. I want to remember with you today the legacy of those early knights and those single-hearted dedication to charity, unity, fraternity, and patriotism. The growth and success of the Knights of Columbus in the Philippines is an outstanding example of the Knights of Columbus worldwide. Your success is the harvest of seeds planted by men like Father George Willman and Father Isaias Idrilan, one an American and the other a Filipino. Both of these priests were instrumental in raising a generation of Catholic men who would stand unswervingly by their country and by their Catholic faith. The Knights never gave up in the Philippines, because Knights don't give up. As long as there is work to be done, the Knights know only one direction, the direction forward. In fact, at the end of World War II, Father Willman, often reverently called the Father McGivney of the Philippines, wrote an article in Columbia Magazine, proudly describing the activities of Knights in the Philippines before, during, and after the war. From running basketball leagues for underprivileged children, to sneaking medical supplies to the survivors of the Bataan Death March, imprisoned in Camp O'Donnell, from housing and feeding refugees in blockaded Manila, to providing American and Filipino soldiers with a place to rest amid the last engagements of the war. In the darkest hours of the last century, Knights of Columbus activities in the Philippines, Father Willman wrote, refused to die. This American priest from Brooklyn was fiercely proud of his brother Knights in the Philippines, and he was especially proud of the title of his article, that the Knights in the Philippines stayed on the job, even when all seemed lost. And if the Knights' activities have always refused to die here in the Philippines, it was Father Willman who helped give birth and raise the order here. After the war, as the Philippines was slowly rebuilding, Father Willman was expanding the reach of the Knights of Columbus. In 1948, he oversaw the chartering of the Second Philippine Council here in Cebu, Council 3106, and then 2 years, and then 2 others, before holding the first Philippines National Convention in 1949. And like Father McGivney, Father Willman had great men to work with. For instance, during the war, there was a persistent effort by the Japanese to turn the Filipinos against the Americans. But this effort went nowhere with the Knights of Columbus. Father Willman wrote this: "The military tried hard to persuade our Filipino Knights, especially prominent members, to participate in radio propaganda and cooperate in other ways with the Japanese, but our Knights steadfastly refused. The Japanese said, 'You call yourself Filipinos, but you are really pro-American, just as pro-American as your Archbishop.'" And Father Willman wrote, "Our Knights were honored by that comparison." Filipino and American Knights, then as now, knew that brotherhood transcended the Pacific Ocean. They were brother Knights, finding unity, fraternity, and even patriotism together in the cause of charity. By the time of Father Willman's death in 1977, there were 457 councils in the Philippines, where there had been only one when he began his work. He groomed the leadership of the Filipino Knights to take the reins after his death, and in 1989 the Philippines was divided into the 3 jurisdictions we have today: Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. And from that time, I was also honored to know and to work with each of the Supreme Directors from the Philippines: Mardonio Santos, Patrick Solis. This one, a Filipino, was also making great strides for the order here. I met Isaias Idralin earlier, a Jesuit priest responsible for the growth of the order in Mindanao. He was a knight imprisoned in a concentration camp and later under house arrest. Yet he was unapologetic of his Catholic faith and his duties as a priest, and of his unrelenting love for the Philippines. A past Grand Knight of Council 3108 remembered this about this great Filipino priest. He was the live wire insofar as Colombianism in Mindanao was concerned. He urged and recruited as many as he could to become Knights of Columbus. And who would not want to be persuaded by this priest's heroic witness in a time of war? He embodied the Christian value of self-sacrifice, risking his life to bring the sacraments into the concentration camps, the prison camps, and to be a beacon of hope in that very dark hour. This Filipino Catholic priest drew men to the Knights of Columbus because he pointed to something that was much greater than himself, a calling to serve where needed, and to a faith that transforms the worst moments of human history into a victory for the witness of Christian charity, and a victory for the unity, fraternity, and patriotism of those involved. This was the spirit of the Venerable Michael McGivney, a determined belief that when ordinary people of faith become united as brothers in the common cause of charity, they can do great things for the people of their country. In other words, it's fraternal unity, acting in charity, that leads us to a real patriotism, a real love for the common good of all of our countrymen. And as I mentioned, this dynamic has happened not in times of war. For over 100 years, American Knights have experienced a strong solidarity with their brothers in the Philippines. When natural disaster strikes, Knights in America have been eager to offer aid. On the ground, Knights in the Philippines are quick to the scene, doing our order proud by their organized response of relief efforts. After the Luzon earthquake in 1990, the Knights of Columbus were there. When Mount Pinatubo erupted a year later, the Knights of Columbus were there. When floods swept through Manila last September, the Knights of Columbus Supreme Council was among the first organizations to respond with major disaster relief donations toward the Philippine bishops' relief efforts. And the Filipino Knights were there again, opening their own damaged halls and standing in the mud to distribute food and supplies to their neighbors turned refugees. From their founding, the Knights of Columbus in the Philippines have proven themselves to be dedicated to the good of their country. In World War II, this meant opening a shelter for relatives of prisoners in Camp O'Donnell and risking their lives to get water and food to the broken and emaciated soldiers on a death march. And more recently, it meant that thousands of Knights in Luzon and Mindanao and Visayas took to the streets in a walk for life. It was a concentrated, coordinated effort, with all three events taking place on the same day, to underscore the absolute and unbreakable unity of the Knights of Columbus on the issue of pro-life, with all of our brothers voicing their opposition to laws that fail to uphold human dignity and that cheapen the value of human life and human love. Since we are here in Cebu City, I would like to highlight for a minute the impressive works of the Visayas jurisdiction under our Deputy Esteban, who greeted me last night at the airport with such a hearty mabuhay. As I mentioned, the second council in the Philippines, Cebu Council 3106, was founded in 1948 by Father Willman. The growth of the Visayas region since that time has been strong, and you now have 53,000 Brother Knights here. Of course, growth requires programs of outreach and support, and Visayas Knights have performed them with distinction. There is a comprehensive spiritual formation program under our council chaplains and lay formators that is bringing to life the Catholic faith of our Knights and their families. Serving the poor is also one of our priorities, and Visayas Knights have launched a livelihood program in which needy families are taught to grow their own organic produce and to market it with the help of Knights. In this way, these families are able to become more self-sufficient and supplement their income. To protect the environment, Knights here have planted trees to slow soil erosion and to help clean the air. In these ways, Visayas Knights are caring for their spiritual lives, helping their neighbors in need, and protecting God's creation. And I commend you all for this great work. 15 years ago, when the Venerable Pope John Paul II came to Manila for World Youth Day, he exhorted Filipinos to seek the renewal of the church in their country, and he stressed at that time that the laity in particular must lead this renewal. And tonight I tell you that the Knights of Columbus must lead the laity in this effort. The Knights of Columbus in the Philippines have been a part of this for over a century, and the Knights here continue to flourish because of the dedication to charity, to witnessing to the beauty and the power of faith in action. With God's grace and continued strong leadership, may the Knights of Columbus in the Philippines continue to serve as the strong right arm of our church. So that strong right arm, I urge you to keep up this good work. I ask you to teach the sanctity of human life in your homes, in your schools, and to defend it in the public square. Teach about the beauty of marriage and marital love, and the central role of the family in the health of any just society. We in America, we at the Supreme Council, we stand with you as you seek to preserve, defend, and promote the Catholic culture of the Philippines. Brother Knights, I urge you to hold the banner of Columbianism high. You are a strong link with our order, and I am personally and deeply grateful for all that you do to bring honor to the Knights of Columbus. We have recalled this evening the great history of the Knights of Columbus in the Philippines. But we recall this history in order that we may move forward to build a new history, a greater history that will be even a stronger history between the Filipino Catholic Brother Knights and our American Brother Knights. So as we go forward into our second 100 years, let us look forward to finding ways in which we can work more closely together with more concerned action for our brothers and our neighbors. Because the Philippines is now the second largest jurisdiction in the Knights of Columbus. And this means that the Philippines in the years to come will have an even greater leadership role in the Order of the Knights of Columbus. And I believe a leadership role that in the years to come will not only deepen and strengthen our Catholic culture in the Philippines, but will begin to extend that culture and the promise of our Catholic faith into more regions of Asia. This will be the true destiny of the Knights of Columbus. And so in closing, let me simply say how proud I am to be with you tonight, how proud I am of what you have all accomplished, and how proud I am of what you will accomplish in the years ahead. Salamat.